Okay, Kathy, we're live. And welcome to your new role as chair of our team.
Thank you. So I'm Kathy Ostrom-Punch, and I'm the new chair of the Awareness Campaign Task Force of the Human Rights Commission. My pronouns are she, her. I live in South Salem. And for introductions, I will pass it to Susan.
I am Susan McNaught. My pronouns are she, her. I live in South Salem, and I will pass it to Tricaria. I mangled your name last time. I hope I don't do it again this time.
We're close. Tricarico, just missed the
Thank you.
second C. Tricarico, my pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I'm a Human Rights Commissioner, and I live in Ward 2 in El Paso, Texas.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gretchen. My pronouns are she, her, and I am staff to the commission. I live in West Salem, but it doesn't matter because I'm not on the team.
Well, Gretchen, as far as walking through the agenda, I may need your help for at least for the first couple of meetings, because I am relatively new to this, even as it is. So I see the first item is public comment. Is there any public comment tonight?
There is no public comment that we've received this evening, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
So I do have a question. Has there been public comment at the task force meetings? I'm not sure I have heard any at the meetings I've attended.
I'm trying to think back. Not that I can remember, but I could be wrong. This task force has been in place not completely continuously, but for about 5 years. Okay. And the only pause that I'm having is that for a while we were being visited by students who would sometimes come as a class requirement, and they would offer kind of a comment, but we generally don't get public comment here. Of course, the Human Rights Commission would be more,
the full commission.
More predictable. Yeah.
Okay. So the next item is approval of the minutes from the December meeting. Susan and Tricarico, I don't know if you had a chance to look at those, but if either of you have a motion to approve them.
I can make a motion to approve them.
I will second.
So do we formally have to vote on whether they're approved? Okay.
Saying, can I have a vote to approve? And,
okay.
Yeah.
So can I have a vote to approve? Everyone in favor of approving the minutes from the December 22nd meeting? Either say aye or raise your hand.
I think you probably need to abstain because I wasn't there.
I'll make that note. No problem.
Thank you. Otherwise, I would approve.
Okay, I didn't hear any objections. So the next item is the discrimination survey. And I realized that was done in May last year, which is going to come up here pretty quickly. So Gretchen, I joined the task force, I think, after the survey was already developed and in place. So I'm not sure what was done before.
Thank you. I'd be happy to talk with you about that.
Yeah.
At the team's interest from last meeting, I reached out to the professor that we've worked with in all of the past surveys, and you might know that's Professor Marianne Bradshaw, who we've worked with in her capacity as a professor at Willamette University and also at Western Oregon University. She's taught at both campuses. I checked with her again, and she said, yes, absolutely. She again was able to have the discrimination survey be a part of a class project this year. So was supportive of the idea and proposed a schedule just like last year. So to give you a little bit of a glimpse into that, there's potential interaction maybe as early as March, if there's preliminary questions or things that you want to think about or ask of the professor, for example. But if we went off of last year's schedule, as she suggested, the first activity would be the potential for all of you that are interested to attend one of the classes that the students would have, which last year was in early April. They always appreciate the opportunity for the whole class and for the members of this task force to talk together and kind of talk through the goals and the objectives and the past history of the survey. And that traditionally has been in early April. And then there's an opportunity for sort of input, thinking about if there's questions. In the past, we've had some feedback on, oh, can we do this a little bit differently or that a little bit differently? The students may have ideas and questions about refinements. So that's kind of the nature of April. Last year, they had a questionnaire prepared by April 30th. And then what they called it close field. They wanted to close the field or close respondents to the questionnaire on May 20th. So the month of May included the distribution of the survey, promotion of taking the survey, and it also included some in-person visits to people who are unsheltered in the community to help them access the survey. And then between May 20th, when the survey closed, and the first week of June was really a time when the students examined the input and prepared the report that they provide to us. And then they came to the full Human Rights Commission meeting in June and presented their findings. You know, they prepared a report that summarized the survey findings and provided their perspectives and their learnings from it. So if you are open to that, again, that's what's been proposed by Professor Bradshaw.
And so how much of the development does the class primarily develop the survey?
They do.
Okay.
They do. And Marianne seems to be building on the previous surveys. The very first class created it in consultation with this task force. And then the second and the third classes have discussed it from the baseline of the existing questionnaire. So I think, I imagine, again, that would be the same thing. There could be a process of examining what changes there might need to be made, if any, you know, what advice you all would have, what advice the professor would have, what questions the students have.
Okay. Susan and Chikiriko, what do you think about that plan, about doing the survey this year?
I think that sounds good. It seems like a really logical time frame.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me. And I remember going into the class last year when I felt very new to it all. And it was really great. It was really just a conversation between us and the students, you know, since they already have the survey from last year, they're really just going to kind of tweak it. So we can take a look at it and see, okay, do we want to make any changes, or they might recommend changes to us based on what they're learning, because the class is teaching them how to survey. So we're really just kind of acting as a consultant, I guess, and they're driving, you know, most of the changes and data and all that. So it was a really fun experience. I really enjoyed doing it, and I'd probably do it again to go to the class or to the class virtually.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a good plan to me.
Well, very good. Then, hearing your permission, I'll circle back with the professor and say, hey, we're a thumbs up, we're in, and clarify when she's ready what dates would look like for this year, you know, with that understood framework of how it worked last year. You know, she'll probably say, oh, you know, would this date work for coming to my class, for example, and I can be back in touch with those details. If you like, one of your future agenda items, maybe in February or March, could be to take a look at the results of last year and the questionnaire, just as a matter of preparation, in case you'd like to refamiliarize yourself with the documents and start thinking ahead to the upcoming survey.
I would like that, since I wasn't part of it before. That would be really helpful.
You bet.
Yeah, I think looking at the previous students' report, and they had some recommendations at the end of things for not only for the commission to do, but of what future surveys, how they might be improved. So I think that would be good to look at that and keep that in mind for the next one.
Very good. I'll add that Kathy, to the agenda that I send to you for approval for the next meeting, and I'll let the professor know that we're in for this year.
Yeah, good. Good.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next agenda item, I think I asked for this to be kind of an ongoing item, is getting the word out within the unsheltered communities. And Susan, I don't know how much how familiar you are with this, but coming out of last year's survey, we got a lot of feedback from our unsheltered respondents about the discrimination and the poor treatment they deal with on a daily basis, and how we can help them with that. And there's a couple of pieces to that. There's what they really want is for it to stop, make people stop treating us badly.
Really?
And then the other piece of it is, what can we do just to increase the awareness among the unsheltered community that the Human Rights Commission is here? And so that's something that we've been talking about, ways to do that. Now, with the Chapter 97 potentially being amended to include housing status as a protected class, we had talked about waiting on maybe doing a lot of outreach until we get that done, so that can be a piece of the outreach. But in the meantime, if there's some brainstorming about what we can do in terms of outreach, and also in terms of a public education campaign, just kind of keeping that item alive so we don't forget about it. And as ideas come up, that we track those. So I don't know if anybody has any ideas. I've kind of been thinking about it off and on, but I don't know how I have any great ideas yet. And I don't know how soon we're looking at for any changes to Chapter 97 to be made based on the motion that was approved. Was that a couple weeks ago now? I think January 10th.
Yeah, the motion was approved at the January 14th meeting, if my memory serves me. And actually, I received an email with some information that I haven't had a chance to open yet, just very recently. So I think that work is progressing.
Okay.
So I need to take a look at that, but I think it could be moving more quickly than maybe we had originally thought, perhaps. So yeah, stay tuned.
That's good.
Yeah.
Gretchen, I know that the city has a Facebook page and some potentially scheduled things that are going out. Is there room to add something in like maybe a monthly or quarterly rotation to their kind of outreach plan?
Yes, we can suggest content to them. When I say them, my colleagues in communications who we work in the same team. Yes. And so if there's ideas, pieces, we can develop little pieces or suggest content. Yes, we can.
Okay, I was wondering, there was so many great comments in our last survey, both from respondents who were unsheltered and then from the students who went out and talked to the unsheltered folks. I'm wondering if we could like share a testimony from that every month or every quarter as part of our like public education campaign of like, hey, this is the reality that folks on the street are facing. And they're human beings, they're people who deserve to be respected, because I think one of the best ways to kind of raise public awareness is like humanize the person that's being othered, right? Like try to bring the reality of like, hey, this could be your neighbor or your grandma or your brother. Like, these are people who deserve respect. And there was so much great stuff already written. We could start with that. And then, as we're doing outreach, as we're meeting people, we could ask permission, like, hey, the story you shared with me today is really powerful. Would it be okay if we use this as part of our campaign for awareness? Redacting personal information, obviously, for safety, because I think it would be nice to kind of show like, hey, the city cares about you, and the city sees you, and we're going to try to keep working on ways to support you.
Thank you. That's a great idea. And it's reminding me, I feel like I've had several conversations lately with members of city council and the community about the power of story, about the power of just a person's actual experience and how meaningful that can be and how connecting that can be for someone in a new and different way. So it just really fits that. And I wonder if if any of you have time and interest, feel free to peruse through that document. And if there's particular phrases or stories that really speak to you, send those to me if you wouldn't mind, and I can do the same, but I'd be interested in what really moves you.
Yeah, I think it would also be good to focus on busting some of the myths around our unsheltered neighbors. Like, people are just surprised to learn that some of them have jobs and some of them are receiving benefits, and it's still just not enough. And I'm sure that, oh gosh, I'm blanking on her name, Linnell, our contact, could be another resource for stories like that. You know, especially working in the women's shelter where folks might be escaping like violence or something like that. You know, not to like, you know, trauma dump on people, but just paint a picture that it's not a choice. It's the result of some really not great things in our society. And yeah, the power of stories is just something we could really tap into with some of the stuff we have in that survey, and just some of the things that we hear from folks who are coming and talking to us about stuff.
That's a great idea. So it kind of fits into another question I was going to ask you, Gretchen, is what is our ability to use the city's Facebook and other social media outlets for Human Rights Commission content? I mean, Tricarico has a great idea, and there's specifically, I was going to ask about the communication plan. You know, we had that list of monthly commemorations that we wanted to put something out. Would those be things that we could do through the city's page, or is there some other outlet for those communications?
You know, thank you for asking. It's actually been a little while since I've checked in with the communications team to hear their latest thinking on the frequency. I know confidently that we can offer content to the city's social media, and they have Instagram, I think they have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and they also do a Friday email communication that has a significant number of subscribers, which, by the way, we write a homelessness update component to. And so that's kind of another, related to this particular topic, that's another thread that I connect with that we could help connect into. And then, of course, there's the web page. There's news stories that go up on the web page, and there's news releases that go out to the media. So there's definitely a set of communication tools that the city has. What I don't know is the latest thinking on the frequency and what type of content fits where, because I know that you know, that evolves over time and changes. But I'm very confident that we could be suggesting material and get their feedback. So I'd be more than happy to do that. There's another tool to bring to your attention if you haven't seen it yet. Church at the Park published a booklet a while back that had very well done photographs and then stories or vignettes of situations outside that, and they're working on a second iteration of that. So that could be an additional kind of resource that might be of interest to everybody. But yeah, those stories are very plentiful. You got me thinking about a person I met out in Bush Park who was living in their car, who shared that they were a manager at a local retail outlet at a manager level, and had been for some time, and was you know, very articulate, but just explained that they can't find affordable housing. And so living in their vehicle was what they could do, you know, until they could find a unit that was affordable with their salary. And, you know, I've thought about him I think I talked to him a couple of years ago, and I think about him frequently.
Yeah, there are a lot of stories that are definitely worth sharing. And I think it would go a long way towards in changing people's perceptions who don't otherwise hear the stories, you know, if they don't stop and talk to people, or they don't have any way of hearing kind of those real life situations. But as far as the role of the awareness task force, I mean, I think there's lots of information we would want to put out, at least in my mind, and how do we stagger that? How do we time it? And so that would be helpful to know the frequency,
Okay.
and then maybe have come up with a plan of content and timeframes based on what the information you get.
Great. Okay, let me see what I can learn about that.
Good, and I'm happy to hear that the Chapter 97 changes may be moving more quickly than we were thinking. That's good. I was thinking it might be a lengthy process that we had to wait through, but
Yeah.
I'm pleasantly surprised. Okay. Any other thoughts on getting the word out with the Unsheltered communities? I think we've got some good ideas. It's just a matter of getting the content and figuring out how we can get it out there.
Mhm.
And I think it's an ongoing process, right? I don't think there's not a one-time piece. There's
No.
continuous information coming out.
Well, yeah, because there are going to be different folks ready to hear it at different times, I think.
Mhm.
So if we keep putting it out there, then when they're ready, then they'll get it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, Gretchen, if we could share some success stories from the micro shelters that are going around,
Yes.
because I think that would really help some positive PR to show people that is the solution that is working. Because I think I remember reading in a report you already had several families that have transitioned into permanent housing. So it'd be really cool to highlight that, maybe highlight, hey, this month we got this many people into permanent housing, or, to date, we've had this many people. I think you could cycle that through multiple times throughout the year. And then if there are stories that come out of that we get permission to share, like, oh, here's a family that was living in their car or whatever, someone lost their job and they had to couch surf with friends, and then they were successfully able to transition. I think that would be a kind of a double whammy, because we'd be able to humanize the people who went through this experience, and then show them that this micro shelter community is actually helping folks.
Thank you, for sure. And the two that are available right now have exceeded what folks thought might be workable. The program that serves families, for example, we've been surprised. 74% of those who've come through have already exited to a positive destination. That chance to come in and stabilize and have safety and security and the access to case management and having everything right there has just been very good. And to quote the folks that are working there, they say they just become very motivated once they have a chance to sleep and stabilize to get to that next step. So it's been neat to see. The other site, which is serving adults, is at 37 to 40% exiting to a positive destination, which we're also really thrilled with. The original target was more like 25%. So it's been really good so far. For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
great.
awesome. I also love hearing about, like, for how many dollars the city invested, this is how many families we helped, because I think people often imagine that these are, ridiculously expensive things. And like, I'm of the opinion, like, I don't care how much it costs, people deserve shelter, but there's always going to be people who want to kind of see the return on investment or whatever. And I think people would be surprised about how little it actually costs, especially compared to like what it would cost to house that family in a jail facility because of something that comes up, like it's actually cheaper to just give people a house. And people don't always realize that.
It's a great point.
I think the success stories will also help folks as the city is looking at sites for other shelters to not be so fearful and to maybe be a little bit more welcoming.
Thank you. Great point.
Yeah, I don't remember which meeting it was. There was a recent council meeting where they were talking about the sites and some of the public comment. I think there's a real misunderstanding of what the managed sites are like, and anything we can do to spread that too, that it's a managed site. It's not just, piles of garbage that you might think you're going to see on the side of the road. There's a lot more going on there than that. So I think that's important too. Yeah.
For sure. Commonly misunderstood. We step into the conversation and folks immediately go to the unmanaged, scattered situations around the city.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how widespread the problem is and how how it affects everybody. It's not just a certain type of person. We can't make those assumptions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. So it sounds like there's a lot that we can put out there. My question is just, how and when, and if that's something we need you need to find more about from your colleagues, and then we can circle back.
Sounds perfect.
Okay.
I'll be prepared with an update for the next meeting on things like frequency of, and any other initial feedback they'd have on what they'd be looking for in the content development.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, great.
And this isn't on the agenda, but looking at the communication plan, would you mind, Gretchen, helping me understand more about how that is actually going to play out in practice? There's a list of commemorations each month of the year. And I know we talked about putting out a communication, but is there something we can be doing as the task force to make that happen? Or
yeah, I was actually going to ask for help with that in case there was interest. I got to thinking that I certainly don't have to hog the writing, for example. If there's others that are interested, I wanted to say that one way, so there's a couple of ways that commissioners and task force members could help with that. One is if you have particular thoughts about the content, if you have ideas about how things should be phrased, I absolutely welcome that. It doesn't need to be me putting it together. You might remember that we have our list for that kind of has some suggestions each month. And we had the idea of being a bit flexible to kind of flex that month to what might be of interest or current events, but that those are always things we could draw from as potential ideas. Like in January, I did the events that I was aware of that were offered around Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. But, we could pivot in a different direction in January in any given month, for example. So people could suggest content, people could volunteer to write content, however you want. And then the third way is probably to suggest speakers, but that should be a little bit out for scheduling, because we talked about one medium, of course, is the email listserv that we have. And you might know that we have email addresses for people who've signed up to receive information from the Human Rights Commission, and also email addresses from a variety of organizations that connect with a variety of identity communities. So whenever we were aware of a group or an organization that works with the different identity communities, we collected an email address. And so this email listserv gets to all of those folks. We also recognized, I think, at a meeting previously that this content each month, like MLK Day in January, for example, could lend itself to a speaker at the Human Rights Commission meeting that might be of interest to the commission members and the public that's watching. So that's another way to contribute, is you could say, hey, I noticed in April, it's National Volunteer Recognition Month. I think so-and-so has been an amazing volunteer in the Micronesian Islander community, for example, and why don't we tee them up to speak at the Human Rights Commission in April? Those things is great if we can have a little bit of notice to help get it into the agenda and get it on people's calendars. But I think those are all ways people can contribute. I've thought too about, I'll need to check in with the communications team, because I've wondered about the intersection with the content we develop and then the city's broader stuff. Maybe, for example, the MLK stuff that we produce could be of interest and shared with a broader city communications. And so I think there's times when that could happen, and I need to ask them about that too. They've had some staffing turnovers, and we haven't talked about it in a little while, so I feel like I need to check back in.
I'm thinking, would that be an appropriate ongoing agenda item for the task force, is to look at that communication plan to see what's coming up, and gonna have a plan for like next month, February is Black History Month. Would it be appropriate for this group to talk about what we should do for that? And I don't know, the timing of the meeting might be a little too close. We might need to look at the following month, but
in my opinion, it would be. I think that it would be great. All too often, I find myself just sort of pulling together information from what I can find. And I feel like it would be enriched and only better from the input from this group. So absolutely. And we don't have a set date in the month when we send things out. So for example, I certainly haven't written anything or prepared anything for February. And so it's not too late to get your input tonight about what you think should be shared in February. And like you said, we could always look ahead to March and say, hey, why don't we think about this for February and this for March, for example. And you also, of course, don't need to feel held to that list. You can feel like if there's things that occur to you that's off that list, I mean, it's completely up to us as long as it relates, to our mission and our focus of the Human Rights Commission.
Right. I think the task force's goal is not to increase awareness in the community of the Human Rights Commission and the issues that we're
Yes.
that we're supporting. Okay.
Correct. I've also, as you know, have not been doing a very good job and a very consistent job with finding events in the community and doing the calendar. And I was going to mention that too. I'm always open if somebody is excited about that project and wants to work on updating the calendar or suggesting events to me. I think several of you have done that in the past, and it's always really welcome to me. So don't hesitate to let me know if there's an event that I'm not seeing.
I try and forward things I become aware of to you, but I'm not always thinking about that when I see them.
Yeah, no problem. And I don't always see things. I don't know if it's my increased workload or if it's COVID or I'm not looking in the right places anymore or what, but I feel like I've been less successful than I used to be at finding things.
Not knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Takiriko and Susan, what do you two think about having the communications plan being on our agenda every month and looking ahead to see what we might want to put out?
I think it's a good idea. I think that if we have some time to think, we'll probably do a better job. So, yeah.
And Susan, have you seen that list? I'm not sure. It may have been in the meeting materials for our last full commission meeting, but I'm not sure.
I'll send it to you, Susan.
Thank you.
And the one I have still it looks like it still says draft on it. I don't know if that's the most recent.
I'll check and send it out to everybody.
Okay. Okay, and then I think the other thing on the agenda, go between documents here, is just general awareness activities for the year. If either of you can think of any, or Gretchen too, can think of any other things that might be good ways to get the word out and increase awareness. I don't know that we're necessarily need to brainstorm a list right now, but it's just something I've been going back to when I first joined the commission a year ago. And I had all these great ideas, and I think I've lost several of them over the past few months, but I'm gonna go back and see if I can find my notes from that time and see if there's other things that we might want to look at doing.
Do we have tables at events like World Beat or the State Fair?
Sometimes, yes. It's been kind of slow because of the pandemic, but I think over the last year, we've had a table at a few community gatherings, Pride, like rallies downtown. I'm trying to think what else. I also learned that the Saturday market does allow like information booths for free, I think. So if we have enough, the problem is getting enough people who are interested in doing the event.
Right.
So if we have people who are interested, I would like to see us do some more in-person things and some tabling, because I think that's a huge part of just letting people know we exist.
In the past, has the tabling primarily fallen to the awareness task force, or has it been?
No, it's for
Others
the
on the
whole
commission
commission. Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like, Gretchen, did we have an agreement somewhere about so many community hours or something, which, I mean, we've completely put by the wayside because of the pandemic, but it is an expectation that every member of the commission does participate in some kind of community event if possible. So yeah, we would like to see everyone participate, not just,
Good.
the three of us.
That might be an idea to reaffirm, like you said, with the pandemic that slowed down so much from the way it used to be. And you do have that agreement that was made a few years ago where the commissioners agreed upon kind of a common set of expectations for one another. Kathy, I could see that being part of this task force's update. You could have me attach that as part of the meeting materials and say, hey, we want to check in as we anticipate more in-person meeting or tabling opportunities, Saturday market. We'd like to check in on, this commitment and, maybe let them know we're going to be sending out opportunities as they become available or what have you, kind of start people thinking about it.
That's a good idea.
It might help at some point since we've had some turnover and it's been a while to ask for a little bit of time on the Human Rights Commission agenda to talk through a tabling experience, let people know what are the resources that we have, what are the tools that will be there, even talk through example interactions with the community to just help prepare people, because sometimes that can feel foreign or uncertain. If people aren't naturally extroverted, they might have questions or trepidation. So that could be a productive little bit of time.
I was thinking about Saturday market this last summer, and I had stopped at a table of, I don't know what it was, but Sparrow Furniture. And as I was talking with the two young men about what they were doing, it was interesting because there was a couple standing sort of behind me, and I could hear them say, I never knew they were there. And it was really cool because it was doing exactly what they needed it to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We can raise that at next month's meeting. I've only been to one event. I went with Mike to Pride. I didn't know what to expect, but it really wasn't nearly as the expectations in my mind. The expectations were much higher than they actually were standing there. People came by and they were either interested or they weren't, and they took information or they didn't. So yeah, I think, and hopefully this year we get more opportunities to be out and about also. I'm
Yeah,
hoping that things will be more opened up.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Anything else? I think that's most of the things that were on the agenda for tonight, aside from member remarks and announcements, which I never know what that means because I don't think anybody, oftentimes people don't have anything to say, but
Yeah, and you'll have to shape that how you like it, how all of you like it. That's traditionally just been a moment for, in case there's sort of anything else on folks' minds, new ideas, new topics that might relate to the task force's mission. But
there's a couple of things I've made note for to bring up at the next full commission meeting, but I don't know that they necessarily relate to the awareness task force specifically. But okay, well, hopefully we did okay today.
of course. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and so if there's nothing else, I think do we have to vote to adjourn, or can I just say that we're adjourned?
You can just,
if there's nothing else. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I'll see you all next time.
Good
Thank you.
night,
Have a good
all.
night.
Thank you, Kat.